Wednesday afternoon to you, 4 o'clock time for Sports4CLE. Thanks for joining us. Hope you're having a good afternoon. Ian Rappaport from NFL Network's The Insiders on if he thinks Deshaun Watson can live up to his contract.
Well, let me bring up a couple caveats here. Yes, it is an expensive contract, obviously. Anytime you have a fully guaranteed deal, it is noteworthy, it is important. That was a great contract for Deshaun Watson. But as time has kind of moved on, he's gone down the quarterback ranking for highest paid. Now the 8th highest paid quarterback. So not a bargain by any means, but certainly not as crazy expensive as it was. As far as the fully guaranteed deal, quarterbacks almost never get cut. They actually get traded. So it's not like that if something terrible happened, the contract would stand in the way. But here's the other caveat. Before he got hurt last year, before he had that very strange shoulder injury that he actually played through, let it come back during, and then had surgery ending his season afterward, he was playing really well. He was showing signs of being that quarterback that they traded for, being that franchise superstar guy. Does sound like his rehab has gone well. It sounds like, if anything, they've had to pull him back. I expect him to be like his old self in training camp and finally pay off that big-time contract that the Browns gave him.
With that, let's welcome in Casey Kinnamon from the Barking Browns podcast. Casey, we've talked about this a lot, that contract. The guaranteed money. Now there is an example. Russell Wilson is an example of a guaranteed. Other than that, I don't remember one coming back. That was what Andrew Berry did to close the deal.
Yeah. And it sounds like Ian listens to us. We've been saying this from the beginning when they did it. 2-3 years down the line, this is going to just keep slotting down and down. So now he's the 8th. So in theory, to live up to that contract, he has to be a top 8 quarterback. Coincidentally, that's what the Browns need him to be to go to the next level, is one of those top 8 quarterbacks. So this is definitely in the range of outcomes, in my opinion, to where value meets the contract finally, so people can quit beating that narrative down.
Yeah, the other thing is if he's on the field for 14, 15, 16, 17 games, I don't think there's going to be a question about it. The suspension was longer than anybody thought. I don't think anybody had 11 games as the suspension. That, that's his doing, I guess you can say. Nobody wants to be injured, and you can't hold an injury against somebody in football. Those things happen.
No, and he was trying to play through it, and then they had to let him know this could end your career.
Right.
Save him from himself. He's a competitor. You think about everything he did in that final game against Baltimore with that injury already sustained. He's a gamer. And to Ian's point, like we talk about statistics for quarterbacks, and everybody boils it down to yards and completion percentage. He had the highest quarterback rating in the fourth quarters of games that he participated in. That's exactly what you need a quarterback to be, is in the fourth quarter, is be clutch and lead your team in crucial moments. And that's what he was doing, and it got cut short. Now you have to reset, let him come back, and then probably work off that dreaded word rust, and then get back to that groove, because that's where you need him to be. You need him to be elite in fourth quarters of games.
Yeah, that's my definition of a franchise quarterback. In the fourth quarter with the game on the line, can you go win the game? So we'll see. This is from NFL.com, ranking the 8 NFL divisions by quarterbacks. They have the AFC North number 1, NFC West 2, AFC West 3, and AFC East number 4. Yeah, I don't think this one's even close. Group is first because of the high, firmly established floors of Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow when healthy, as well as potential for the Browns and Steelers to improve their quarterback play from a year ago. And you just look at those, Jackson, Burrow, Watson, Wilson, and Fields. It's not even close as to even the NFC West. I think Brock Purdy, okay.
Yeah, Stafford. I mean, but it's not what this is.
Right.
This is, and we talk about the AFC North all the time about how difficult a division it is. And what that boils down to when you want to break it apart and what makes it a difficult division is look at the strength of play of the quarterbacks in the division, look at the head coaches, look at the pass rushers, the edge rushers. Like, it's a very dangerous division. The quarterbacks, we're kind of, as Browns fans, we're a little immune to Joe Burrow because of the success we've had against him. But make no mistake, he's one of the most premier quarterbacks in this league. You've just been successful against him. But that doesn't take away from what he is as a signal caller. And Lamar's a menace.
Right.
He can erase whatever you think you're doing, and you can bottle him up and say, well, he's this or he's that. But like at the end of the day, he's a playmaker, and you might have an idea of how you want to defend him, but actually pulling that off is very difficult. And we go to Pittsburgh, the upgrade they made this offseason for pennies, getting Russell Wilson and Justin Fields for a bag of balls. Like that's actually impressive to reset their quarterback position, moving from Kenny. So default to us and Deshaun, and we keep hearing about 2020 Houston and all these things, but the reality is the talent is there. Now it's about realization. But from top to bottom, from 1 through 4, this is the top quarterback division in the NFL.
Yeah, the thing about Burrow that I'm concerned, can he stay? There's 2 of the seasons he hasn't finished. He's probably going to lose T. Higgins, after this year. So it'll just, and again, I think he's a great quarterback. It'll just be interesting to see, can he stay at that level and raise the level of everybody around him. This is from Warren Sharp Football, tweeting this out. Air yards for all 2023 passes. So the Browns were number 1 in air yards, 52.99. Texans 51.77. Bills 50.22. It's kind of interesting because you have Ken Dorsey coming in, and the Bills were at 50.22. The Browns, what I would say is they need more yards after the catch. I think the air yards. I'd take more yak rather than air yards. Give me some easy yards.
Yeah, that blew my mind to see they were first on that list, because if you really think back, until Flacco got there, I felt we were very much dink and dunk. Now, Watson would take occasional shots, but that's just not him. That's every quarterback in the league. There's been such a philosophical shift to playing too high over the top and keeping everything underneath. So you don't see regular shots like you used to in the league. But then when Flacco got here, it was just huck it, chuck it, and all of a sudden that elevates where you're at. So you're like, well, what does that mean for this season? Since Flacco's not here, probably not much. But to your point, number 3 on that list is Buffalo and Dorsey coming in. And I think you have the personnel now. You got a couple burners between Judy and Moore, even Jamari Thrash. You think that you might be able to take the top off some defenses and let it rip. But I'm with you. Just get the ball to playmakers in space and let them make plays. And I think you have the guys in place to do that.
Yeah, the thing that I kind of chuckled at was one of the national guys described it as touchdown to check down, which, all right, I'm in. I'm all in. All right, this from Dog Pound Daily. 3 Browns that have to play better in 2024 for the team to find success. Number 3, they go Jedrick Wills, left tackle. And we've talked that one to death. Number 2, Juan Thornhill, safety. And number 1, Deshaun Watson. And Casey, I look at these lists. All those guys were hurt. Again, it's really hard to be productive when you are less than 100%. And NFL is very unforgiving.
Yep. Yeah, 100% injury rate. I don't care who you are. To some degree, you're hurt. But I would also argue that this team's already seen some success with all 3 of those guys not really performing. But I think that those 3 players could take you over the top. If you just work from the bottom up. Jedrick Wills, the spotlight's on you, man. Like it's time to show us what you are, for better or for worse. Consistency, whether that's good or bad, so a decision can be made. And he's obviously going to have a ton of eyes on him to prove the decision makers in Berea right or wrong. Juan Thornhill, I'm super excited to see what he can be healthy with this cast of characters on this defense. I just think that there's so many possibilities, and now you have proven depth behind him. And then if he can really be that true free roaming safety that allows Delpit to move around and be an X factor, I think that's just a huge weapon for you. So I'm excited to see what he can do healthy in this defense. And obviously every conversation is going to begin and end with Deshaun Watson, as it should. He's the most pivotal part of this team. And if he can take his game to that next level, sky is the limit.
So this is from CBS Sports. Best off-season moves by every AFC team. For the Browns, they say signing Jameis Winston to a 1-year, $4 million contract in free agency. Barry securing a Watson insurance policy in the form of Winston, former first overall pick, 2015 draft. Great bargain. Turned 30 in January. Young for a quarterback in today's NFL. Perhaps can lead the offense to greater heights than Flacco did a year ago, should he be required to come off the bench and play for an extended period of time. I think he fits what they want to do a little bit more than what Joe Flacco, what his strengths are.
Yeah. If I were to make the best move, I would say is re-signing Zadarius. I think that's more impactful. Hopefully Winston doesn't play into it too much. Even though my love of Jameis Winston is well documented, I'm a firm believer that even if he were to start every game this season, this is still a double-digit win team and can compete for the AFC North with Winston as the quarterback. And I think just his vibe, just getting him in that locker room and letting him be like that sounding board for Watson and just be that rallying guy. He's the guy that you can't put him in front of the microphone enough, in my opinion. And I'm excited to have a backup of his caliber. We know we talked about it earlier. There's a 100% injury rate, and if called upon, I believe Jameis Winston will be ready and can lead this team to several victories.
Casey Kinnamon from the Barking Browns podcast. And I can step aside, take a quick time out outside the break. We'll talk a little bit about running backs and hear from new offensive line coach Andy Dickerson. Sports for CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Moneymaker from the Ohio Lottery has no interest in beating around the bush. Money Maker. You play the game, you could win money. Up to $2 million. With more than $88 million in prizes from $50 to $500. Moneymaker cuts right to the cash. Unlike this guy.
We continue talking Browns with Casey Kinnamon from the Barking Browns podcast. New offensive line coach Andy Dickerson on the differences between this offense and last year's, especially in the run game.
The head coach still, Kevin Stefanski, so the offense will start with him, and then, just bringing in a combination. You got Ken Dorsey, you got Roy Istvan from Philadelphia, so just a lot of different ideas. And so, again, every week it's, hey, what's the best thing for this week for the opponent that we're going against, how they're playing the techniques. And, I mean, you only have so many zone systems. You have zone, you got gap, you got pin and pull, gap trap. So the number of runs that you have are not finite, but there's certain schemes. So, again, everything's at our disposal. Whatever that week is going to be the best thing for us to win.
Is it safe to say the running game will look different in this new system?
I mean, I don't think it's going to look that much different. Maybe there's some people who can see some nuances, but, I mean, there's plenty of success here for the last couple of years. I worked for Coach Callahan, when I was at the Jets, and worked with him as his assistant at the Jets in 2011. And, I mean, an amazing coach, took so much from him and learned. So there's a lot of carryover and stuff that's familiar to me and to the players. And, again, it's what our guys do best and using their skills, their strengths to get everything done the right way we need to.
Casey, and listening to him talk, there's a reason they went out and got Andy Dickerson to replace Bill Callahan. There's a lot of carryover there.
Oh, yeah. And continuity matters, and to have those same principles. He coached under Callahan, and not only that, he coached under Sean McVay and was the offensive line coach with the Rams, and then was the run game coordinator in Seattle. He has a wealth of experience himself, but he touched on it, that their approach now is to be as multiple as possible, to not be dogmatic and be pigeonholed into any one certain schematic. Like they can do whatever they need to do week to week. And when you cultivate that, cultivate that ability to be unpredictable week to week, you're just that much harder to game plan for. But at the end of the day, he's correct. There's only so many schemes you can run when it comes to the running game itself. So, it's going to look similar in a lot of respects because you're going to play the hits. You're going to play what works. And we've seen a ton of what works in seasons past with Nick Chubb. So if Nick Chubb's back there carrying the ball, it's going to look like business as usual.
So this is from PFF. It's the 2024 running back unit rankings at this time of the year. They've got the 49ers 1, Dolphins 2, Lions 3, Ravens 4, Falcons 5, Packers and Colts 6 and 7. They have the Browns 8th. Browns would easily have been a top 5 running back room if Nick Chubb didn't suffer a terrible knee injury last year, but all reports indicate Chubb is rehabbing best he can and will return in 2024. If he's anything close to the Nick Chubb we know, this is a top 10 running back group. That's probably a pretty fair estimation of how to view the running back room.
Yeah, and I've been saying this. I just think even when you take Nick Chubb out of the room, I still think it's an above average room, but you add Nick Chubb to that and caveat that he's healthy, you're vying for that top spot. I just think if you look what you did, you subtracted Kareem Hunt and you added Deonta Foreman and Nyheim Hines. I think with those two skill sets adding to what you already had, I think that's very formidable. And if Nick Chubb is Nick Chubb, then what are we talking here? You're one of the elite rooms just based on that. But I just like the pieces they've added to this because of what you can do now with using Nyheim Hines as a motion guy. Kevin Stefanski's been wanting to run reverses for years, and that's what he wants to do. If you got Nyheim Hines, you got a guy who can finally pull that off. Plus, he can do the stuff that Kareem Hunt was doing in 2020 as a receiver, where you can put him in the slot and he can actually run routes. I just like the combination that they've put back there.
So you mentioned Kareem Hunt. He was at his youth camp at his alma mater, Willoughby South High School, last week. Was asked about his future in the NFL as well as his time with the Browns.
I'm still training with my high school track coach, Matt Luck, and we just working out, staying in shape, and waiting to hear from some other teams and stuff like that. So,
going back to what you did with the Browns last year, how fun and great of a ride was that as a Cleveland Brown, really bringing them back to prominence?
Oh, it was great, man. It's my hometown. There's nothing more than I wanted to do but help win a championship here in Cleveland. So, I wish them all the best. And that was a fun ride, playing 5 years for the Cleveland Browns is a dream come true.
Is that book closed? Is that a possibility, or what do you have in the fires right now?
I wouldn't say it's closed, but I'm not really sure. So we'll have to see about that.
I remember when we talked to you last year, you said that you had a certain number and a certain thing you were looking for. Is that still the case right now? What are you exactly looking for?
I'm just looking for a good fit, somewhere I could definitely get playing time and help. I want to be on the team that contenders.
What's the challenge of that right now? Because we are just kind of coming right off the draft and no one really knows the hand or don't. What's the challenge of trying to find a fit right now?
Just being patient. We'll see everybody, finishing up OTAs and stuff like that.
So Casey's just waiting to see an opportunity is basically what it is. And you kind of got the sense that it wasn't going to work out with the Browns and Kareem Hunt a season ago.
Yeah, and to his credit, he stayed ready, and he got an opportunity due to an unfortunate injury, and he made the most of it, and he played well in key spots. But I just think that this team moved on from his skill set and started playing with younger people at those positions. But if he wants to keep playing, I just stay ready, and hopefully he gets the opportunity. I'll always root for Reem. It's just a hard life in the NFL as an NFL running back because it's such a short window. If we could evoke a name like Todd Gurley, who hasn't played since 2020, it seems like an ancient player. He's only 29 years old. It just shows you the width of the window for a running back. So if Reem wants to get that opportunity, just stay ready, and you never know what could happen if an injury happens to a team. Get that call and just make the most of your opportunity.
Yeah, and as training camp gets rolling, I'm sure he'll I would guess he will get an opportunity. There was the core muscle injury that we never knew about, so it'll be interesting to see where he lands as well. This from Clutch Points, 2 hidden gems on the Browns' 2024 roster. Number 1, Jerome Ford. Ford carried the load, carried the ball 204 times, 813 yards, 4 touchdowns. Demonstrated a major factor in the passing game, 44 catches, another 319 yards, and 5 touchdowns. Number 2, Devin Bush, expected to play a key role for the Browns' defense, can play inside or outside linebacker. Likely to man one of the outside spots for the Browns, should be valuable asset role where he does not have to be a dominant player. Reliable tackler and is very agile is what they describe him as. I'm curious to see how Jim Schwartz uses Devin Bush because I have a pretty good idea he knows how he wants to use him, and that usually means a guy that's going to be productive.
Yeah, and when you see these clips come out of these linebackers going through the drills, you see JOK and he looks absurd fast and these movement skills. Devin Bush isn't far behind in his movement skills. He's highly athletic and has a ton of explosivity. And to have that type of athlete available to you as a chess piece depth linebacker, that's very dangerous for someone like Jim Schwartz, who can kind of find spots to get that guy in there and take advantage of that. And you just, when I look at the linebacker room, I think they're in a better spot this year than they were last year. I don't think it's an elite room, but it's very serviceable. And you add an X factor like Devin Bush, I don't know exactly how they're going to use him, and I'm interested to see myself. But just from what I'm seeing on tape, the athleticism is still there, so it could be very intriguing.
Yeah, and again, a lot of times with a guy like that, what are you asking him to do? If you don't, there are certain things he can't do because he's a little undersized. But there's a lot he can do because of that speed and quickness.
Yeah, and if you look at the mold of some of the guys in the room, that's kind of what they've targeted. JOK is the same situation, so is Tony Fields. Would I think that Devin Bush is an upgrade from Tony Fields? Yes, I do. I just think it's given Jim Schwartz another highly uber athletic linebacker to kind of move around and be a weapon. I just think that can only service you in the end. And there might be some packages where you get a JOK and Devin Bush and third down on the field together that can have the skills to match up with tight ends and running backs out of the backfield and have that be an even contest. So I'm excited to see what Bush has left in the tank.
Casey Kinnamon from the Barking Browns podcast, and I can step aside, take another time out. Priorities after minicamp and the top 10 rosters in the NFL. Straight ahead on Sports4CLE. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns on Sports4CLE with Casey Kinnamon from the Barking Browns podcast. Andy Dickerson, new offensive line coach, talked about the advantages of having a veteran offensive line to coach.
It's great because you can learn from them. Again, I worked Joel out a million years ago when he was coming out, but I've also been in a room where I've seen, Andrew Whitworth, who, is the same age as me, and he was playing, and so when he talked, there's, volumes that come with that. So if Joel starts to make a point, or Jack, or Jed, if anybody makes one of those points and they're talking to a young guy, I think giving them ownership and listening to their thoughts and ideas, I like to work with the players. I don't say, hey, guys, we work together. So I'm just learning from those guys, and you can learn something from all those guys because they're doing it week in and week out. And so it's a blessing to learn from those guys. I've been a part of younger rooms, older rooms, so it's the diversity of within the room. So just trying to learn as much as you can from everybody, and again, put the best product together possible.
The thing that I keep coming back to, Casey, it'll be interesting to see Jedrick Wills with just a new voice. And again, we've talked forever. Bill Callahan's probably the best offensive line coach there is. Sometimes just a different voice, a different way of doing it gets you where you want to go. I think there's a lot more there with Jedrick Wills that you haven't seen yet.
Yeah, coaching in essence is teaching, and some methods of teaching you receive better. So we'll see what it means for Jed this year. And he has a ton of pressure on him to perform. And if you just look across this offensive line, I just can't imagine a better situation for a first-year guy to come into a new scenario and have this much experience at his disposal. Between Teller and, Joel and Jack, it's Poach, it's everyone. There's a ton of starts under their belt already. So you're not dealing with guys that are trying to figure out their way in the league. It's, for me, this is the perfect situation. And the teaching moments, he's talked about it right there. When Joel speaks, he has the sense to let that give that some air. Let the younger guys hear what Joel has to say, or Jack Conklin, and it's a pretty amazing situation for Andy Dickerson to come into and have this kind of talent and experience at his disposal.
So this one's from the Factory of Sadness. Top 3 priorities after minicamp. Number 1, they say strategizing the target share at wide receiver. Number 2, making sure Jameis Winston has enough time with the starters. And number 3, getting Amari Cooper's contract situation figured out. Casey, when I look at that, they got to figure out Cooper's contract situation. A lot of question marks behind that. I would also say, I don't think you sit down and strategize target shares. That's kind of, you're going to look at it and say, each week, this guy can't cover this guy, so we're going to go to that matchup all game long.
Yeah, and then that's a good problem to have, right?
Right,
you have several talented players. There's only one football, and there's going to be some weeks when some guys only see the ball once or twice in their area, just because that's just the way the matchups dictated everything. And I would expand to what they said. They said wide receiver. Well, you better include David Njoku in that.
Yep.
He saw 122 targets last year and caught 81 of them. I think that needs to go up. I think that there's another level to unlock with him. So when I think of target share, it's going to be interesting, no doubt. And it'll be very telling to see the playing time some of these guys get, because, you obviously with Cooper, what he is. they paid Judy to be someone, so I would expect him to be second in the wide receiver pecking order, probably third overall. But there's a wealth of talent below there that they're going to have to let work itself out, and who knows what that looks like.
Yeah, and I think one of the things you want to do is you want to let your quarterback look at it and say, we got this. That's what Deshaun Watson's really good at processing that. So it's like, oh, we got that matchup? Boy, that's bad for them. That's what you want him to do each and every Sunday.
Yeah. Let him dictate the target share instead of strategizing. This guy needs to see 71 balls. This guy needs to see 110. It'll work itself out. Water finds its level, and their talent versus the matchup versus what the quarterback's comfortable with will basically tell you what the target share is going to be. As far as the Amari Cooper contract, that's priorities 1, 2, and 3 in that room right now.
Yeah,
is you got to figure it out. He's heading into the last year. He wants more. He wants more security. He wants to. And as a fan and an analyst, I want to see them, widen that window of the wide receiver room so you can allow one of these younger guys to step up and be someone. But the reason you feel good about all that potential is because of Amari Cooper being your North Star. You know what he is, and you don't have to worry about the potential because it's Amari Cooper. So figure that out for better or for worse. If it's an impasse you can't get beyond, then you need to come up with a plan B really quick, because you can't be going into next year not knowing who your number one wide receiver is.
Yeah, and it sounds like the Browns want to find a way to make that work.
Mm-hmm.
This front office has been pretty good about finding a way to make things work out. So I'm with you though. There's a lot of talent, but a lot of question marks after Amari Cooper. So, I'm with you. They need to figure that one out. This from the 33rdteam.com, top 10 rosters in the NFL right now. They go number 1, 49ers, number 2, Eagles, and the Browns are number 3, ahead of the Chiefs. So Browns the top roster in the AFC, according to the 33rd team. Might be surprising because the defending Super Bowl champs aren't even the top AFC team, but the Browns are an above-average quarterback away from fighting for the number 1 seed. They might get there in 2024 if the arc of Deshaun Watson's performance in 2023 was a sign of things to come and he's healthy. Well, that's the fairest assessment that I have seen of the Browns roster. Look at that. They're coming around and being more objective.
Yeah, I had to look up the author, Ian Valentino. I was like, all right, someone's talking some sense here. We've been saying it ad nauseum. This roster is complete from top to bottom, and you can have your gripes when you look at your own roster. Like, I wish they would add more here, or I'm not sure about this. Look around the league. Every team has holes. The Browns don't have holes. They have areas they can improve upon, but this is as solid as the rosters you're going to find in the league. And to their point, if Watson's above average, they're fighting for that number 1 seed and roster supremacy. And to their point, though, that's the reason you go and have an elite quarterback is to, Patrick Mahomes is the ultimate nullifier. They don't have to have the most elite roster because he can just erase mistakes. So that allows them the wiggle room to play around. Well, most teams aren't afforded that. You don't have Patrick Mahomes, so you got to build the most complete roster you can. And kudos to Andrew Berry and company, because I believe they've done that this season.
Yeah, and again, I do. I expect big things from Deshaun Watson, so we'll see. I could be wrong, but I think he's due for a really big year. This is from Ian Haritz. It's kind of interesting. Only 6 tight ends had 10-plus screen targets last season. This is from Pro Football Focus. Evan Ingram had 21. David Njoku had 20. McBride, 16. Kelsey, 15. Goddard, 15. And Jonnu Smith, 10. That's not enough screens for David Njoku. That's the guy is a mismatch. I mean, get the ball in his hands and just enjoy the decisions that have to be made trying to tackle him once he gets running.
Yep. You said it before. I mean, he's too fast for linebackers, too big for defensive backs, and if you look at the yards per catch from last season, he's the one tight end on the list in the top 10. Everyone else is a wide receiver. Just get the ball in his hands and let him do work. And I think there's even levels to his game to unlock. That's what's so exciting about this and it doesn't even feel real. We're going into year 8 of him being on the team. He's only 28 years old. And it's just, we watched him grow up in front of us, just from just being just a receiving only tight end to being the most complete tight end in the league. And I think we're at the point now where I'm expecting, even bigger numbers in the red zone. And just, if we learned anything over the final 5-6 games of the season, is run the offense through Njoku. Let just get the ball in his hands. Let him be physical, make business decisions happen from the defense because he forces that. He's just a force, and he's also grown as just as a leader to be the rallying cry for the team, someone they all look towards. And I'm just excited to see what he can do. I think we're entering his actual prime now in year 8 of the league, which just sounds crazy. We haven't had a player who's been here this long and been effective and just grown into what I believe should be a easy top 5 tight end in the NFL.
And as I listen to you kind of discuss that, it's one of the reasons that their age guardrails exist, because they want you want that familiarity, and you want the prime years to be coming when you're paying for them.
Yeah, and it was viewed as a reach when they made the deal, when they signed him. But you don't pay guys for what they've done; you pay them for what they're going to do. And what did he do last year? Caught 81 balls and moved the chains 35 times. Like that, when the running game faltered over the back half, that's what he was for you. And he's so easy to get the ball to. For me, it's a no-brainer, and I just can't wait to see that next level happen for David Njoku.
Casey Kinnamon from the Barking Browns podcast and I are going to take one more time out. Other side of the break. A reason that each AFC team, including the Browns, could make the playoffs next year. Sports4CLE, I'll be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program is dedicated to recognizing exceptional students, teachers, and schools throughout Ohio. Scan the QR code on screen to nominate students and teachers as Academic All-Stars and Teachers of the Month. They must be currently enrolled or teach in grades K through 12. Is your K through 12 school developing students' literacy skills to achieve success in reading? If so, you can nominate your school for the School of the Year. Students can win $100, teachers can win $500, and schools can win $2,500. Scan the QR code, fill out the forms, and nominate deserving students, teachers, and schools today. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program takes pride in honoring exceptional students, teachers, and schools across Ohio. Submit your nomination today. It's fun, fast, and free. We continue talking Browns with Casey Kinnamon from the Barking Browns podcast. One reason each AFC team could make the playoffs in 2024, this from NFL Spin Zone. For the Browns, they say Deshaun Watson begins to look like his old self and the defense stays strong. If Deshaun Watson can regain his Houston Texans form, the Browns would be Super Bowl contenders, best defense in the NFL last year. Only missing piece is quarterback situation being stabilized. Yeah, Casey, I can't argue with that, and I expect it to be. He doesn't have to be 2020 Deshaun Watson. He has to be able to do what he does in fourth quarters of games. Game on the line, go win us the game. Nothing big, just that.
I mean, but we saw it in action. We saw it actually come to fruition last year, and that's what you're asking is, do you feel confident when your quarterback has the ball in his hands with 3 minutes left to go and you're trailing? And we saw that last year, and you started to feel good about it. Obviously, injuries derailed that, and you're going to have to reset. But I think that is the goal. And if he's 80% of that 2020 passer that he was in Houston, then the playoffs aren't the goal. It's the Super Bowl. I think that's what this has all been building towards. This is what's been going on since Barry and Stefanski got in the building. This is what we've been building at. And they talk about the defense there, and I keep hearing they were the number one defense. They're the number one defense in certain categories. There are several areas they need to clean up. And I just believe that going into year 2 of Jim Schwartz's system, that's the goal. I think the talent is 100% there on that side of the ball for them to be one of those defenses we look back years from now and talk about. We'll hear about the 2000 Ravens or the 2002 Buccaneers or even the vaunted 85 Bears. Player for player, talent for talent, they have that kind of possibility in front of them. I'm super excited to see what they're going to be able to do and really make statements game to game, not the inconsistency where we'd see them have 2 good games in a row at home and then go on the road and have to find themselves. They need to be that team every game.
So this is from Yard Barker. 3 under-the-radar Browns players that can single-handedly shift Cleveland's 2024 season for the better. They go defensive tackle, Mike Hall Jr. Hall will not have to line up day one as a starter for the Browns. Instead, he'll be able to ease into the rotation. If he can become a key 3 tech for the defense and be disruptive in this first year, that'd be huge. Running back, Deontay Foreman, with the uncertainty around Nick Chubb, when Nick Chubb will return, Foreman will be able to carry some of the workload until the Browns get their top running back onto the field. If he can be productive with the offensive line, he can be a weapon. And defensive end Alex Wright is number 4 pass rusher for Cleveland. Wright had 5 sacks last year. If he can take another leap, the Browns will give him even more snaps. Yeah, I expect all 3 of those things to happen.
Yeah. The right one's curious too, because he's not really a pass rushing defensive end. He's a strong side setter, but he had 4 sacks to finish out the year, 4 consecutive games in the regular season. Like, he was really coming on strong. And then you look at what they already have in that room as far as pass rushers. You're like, man, it's quarterbacks are going to be in trouble. That's all I can say is between Miles, Zadarius, Ogba, and you add Alex Wright to that. I just think that's a very formidable group, probably as deep as anyone in the league at that particular position. I think Deontay Foreman is going to be a fan favorite. I just think that they're going to really appreciate how hard-nosed this guy runs. And anytime he's been fed, anytime he gets 20-plus carries in the game, he puts on the yards, and he gets stronger as the game goes. And that's always a fan-friendly type of running back, especially if you're playing with the lead and you're trying to put a game away. He's a guy that can do that. And then once Chubb comes back, he kind of defaults into what Kareem was for you in that short yardage situation. So I'm really excited to see what he can do. And then Michael Hall, like, for me, they don't have trouble rushing the passer from the interior anyway. You know, if you look at Quentin Jefferson, you look at Maurice Hurst, what Shelby can give you, Dalvin, you add another player like this, and if he can really come on and be a difference maker, the rotation's ridiculous. You know, it's maybe not the top end of some of the other teams on the interior, but from top to bottom to being able to get after a quarterback, man, they've really set the table for themselves on this defense.
The thing that he gives you is he gives you another guy that's quick off the ball. I mean, think
Very.
about that. You can go and pick. You have 3 guys that get off the ball that quickly. There aren't many offensive lines that you can't pick a spot and go, okay, this guy gets off the ball slow. Let's have him deal with you.
And especially in the fourth quarter of games, when you have that kind of depth, you can keep that kid fresh. And you can unleash him in the fourth quarter. And he has no business moving like that for a 290-pound kid. And he's super young. Once again, the age guardrails come into factor here. So we might not see the best out of him for 2 or 3 seasons. But just to be able to have that depth, that kind of athleticism that you can unleash at certain times in a game on 3rd and longs and just let him go hunt, I think he's going to be in a great situation here in Cleveland.
All right, before I let you go, what areas of this roster, and we've already said roster's great, what areas of the roster concern you the most, and what areas do you think are the deepest?
It's going to be the get off my lawn moment. Tight end, man. Tight end. For me, when I look at tight end, the plan is for David Njoku to not get injured. Because behind him, I don't know what you're doing. Like, you got guys who can maybe be a pass-catching guy or be an H-back. But if he gets hurt, can you even run 11 personnel? Do you have another guy that can go out there and be an inline blocker? I'm not sure that you do. So I look for them to make a move. I don't think I'm looking at the free agent market. I don't think that's happening. Probably roster cut down, so you probably take into camp the way you're situated and kind of let it work out, and hopefully someone falls to you that you could be serviceable as that tight end 2 role in 11 personnel. So that'd be the area that I'm the most concerned with.
Yeah. What about strength? What do you think? What would you go with?
Where do we start? We talked about it. I mean, I think cornerbacks, when you look at cornerback, I think you're situated really well right now, and I can't wait to see how it plays out in camp. Obviously, the top end solidified, but you kind of let that bottom end work itself out and see what you got in some of these younger players. You know, like, I want to see what Miles Harden can do. The edge room's ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. It's the best situation we've had since I've been watching Browns football. And I will stump on it here. I think that running back room from top to bottom is as solid as you're going to find, man. I just think that I'm super excited to see what Aiden Robbins can do. Do I expect him to crack this unit this year? Probably not. Probably a practice squad guy, but he's different than everybody else. You know, he's 6'3", 240. Like, that is the guy I want to keep my eye on. He's going to be a lot of fun to watch in the preseason. But there's several loaded rooms on this roster.
Casey Kinnamon, as always, appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Casey.
Anytime, Dave. Thanks for having me.
Casey Kinnamon, make sure you check him out. The Barking Browns podcast We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. We continue talking Browns. Mac Robinson from 92.3 The Fan. Straight ahead. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
Moneymaker from the Ohio Lottery has no interest in beating around the bush. Money Maker. You play the game, you could win money. Up to $2 million. With more than $88 million in prizes from $50 to $500. Moneymaker cuts right to the cash. Unlike this guy.
I am powerful beyond my wildest imagination.
I will define my future.
I will keep challenging myself to improve.
Because I am a future leader of this great nation.
I will be responsible for raising a beautiful family.
And educating not only my generation, but many more to come.
I will make a difference in my community.
And I will stand up for what I believe in.
I will not settle for simply chasing my dreams. I will achieve them.
Because I was given a chance.
An opportunity.
A home.
At Family, Career, and Community Leaders of America.
The ultimate leadership experience.
FCCLA has been one of the greatest experiences of my life.
It's made me who I am today.
Join us. We'll build a new future together.
We continue talking Browns on Sports4CLE. This from Pro Football Focus, clustering the NFL defenses for the upcoming season. A year ago, cluster 2 highest graded defenses on average in 2023. Ravens, Bills, Browns, Cowboys, Chiefs, Dolphins, Saints, Jets, Steelers, and 49ers. So that was the highest graded defenses on average season ago. Cleveland was home to the highest pass rush win rate of any team. It's better than 60%. And the defense allowed the lowest EPA per play, minus 0.27 yards. They were also the lowest first down conversion rate in the NFL at 22.6%. Let's welcome in Mac Robinson from 92.3 The Fan. Mac, those are all important metrics. Probably the best one is the lowest first down conversion rate. That tells you they had the most 3-and-outs.
It's really great when you can stop drives before they even really start. And you know, that's really telling, especially, you know, you saw that last year, especially early on in the season, you know, against teams like Tennessee. You saw that obviously against a team like Arizona, which I understand they had Clayton Tune, but it's still an NFL offense. But, you know, again, at the same time, seeing how the Browns defense operated, especially throughout the season, really was impressive to me. And, you know, especially at home, I know the home road splits were difficult, but at the same time, seeing how dominant that defense flashed that it could be last year, and mind you, that's before the way that they upgraded this interior pass rush as well. You add in somebody like a Mike Hall, you add in, you know, somebody like a Quentin Jefferson, you know, adding in more depth and more rotational pieces that will make more sense along that defensive line. I think it's going to be even more impactful this year, which, again, is really saying something when they were a very, very dominant defense to begin with. But at the same time, again, you have the talent up front. You have the talent in the secondary, arguably one of the most talented secondaries in the NFL. And so, you know, again, I look at how this defense is balanced, and I really think that it sets up well, especially. And there's a reason why they're in that group on the defensive side. And really, top to bottom, talent-wise and execution, they really showed it last year.
Yeah, and to your point, they might even be better this year. Along those lines, Devin Bush, one-year deal is a low-risk gamble. Take a look. These are PFF missed tackle rates since 2021. So in 2021, it was 5.6. In 2022, 3.5. 2023, 5.6%. Those are his missed tackle rates. No Browns defender with 250-plus snaps has had lower rates in that span. The other thing is, I have a lot of confidence that Jim Schwartz has a plan for how he wants to use him. And I think that's one of the reasons when Andrew Berry went out and got him, they kind of went to Jim Schwartz and said, how would you use him? And he said, this way.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a great aspect of there as well. And of course, obviously, a tweet being from Mac, I know it's probably a smart idea. But anyway, I look at Devin Bush in particular here. And, he's somebody that I think that this linebacking crew has really kind of been missing. Obviously, you have that athleticism when it comes to JOK, but, having somebody like Devin Bush that has that athletic profile combined with the missed tackles, again, that percentage being very low is such a key for a depth piece, especially at linebacker as well. But also, even more so, like you said, it's a utilization that Jim Schwartz will have. I'm perfectly fine with giving more tools for Jim Schwartz to be able to utilize in that toolkit. But also, I think it's also key to remember, too, with the new special teams rules this year, you have different types of players that you're going to have on those special teams coverages. And so to have somebody like a Devin Bush in your back pocket that you can go ahead and utilize in that role, I think it's such a key aspect to go ahead and be able to throw in there, both on special teams and also on the defensive unit.
So this from Bucky Brooks with NFL.com. Biggest threats to break the NFL single-season receiving record in 2024. It's Calvin Johnson's 1,964 receiving yards back in 2012. Number 1, he has Tyreek Hill. Number 2, Amon-Ra St. Brown. Number 3, Justin Jefferson. 4 is George Pickens. 5 is Amari Cooper. Cooper with Deshaun Watson back as team's QB1 in a new offense directed by Ken Dorsey. The ball should head in Cooper's direction early and often as go-to guy in the passing game. Considering how Dorsey's previous wide receiver one, Stefon Diggs, racked up ridiculous numbers as the focal point of the offense, it's easy to envision Cooper making a run at that record in Cleveland's offense. The thing is it allows Cooper and Watson freedom to get easy yards. Off coverage, you dump it to him, and you get him the ball in his hands, and he turns a 4-yard pass into a 14-yard gain. So, yeah, I think you're going to see some of that.
Yeah, the only reason why I slightly would disagree with Bucky here is the fact that you add in somebody like a Jerry Jeudy. You add in somebody, obviously, they already have David Njoku in tow. And then also you still have Elijah Moore, which hopefully we're not getting the Debo packages like we did for the first 6 weeks of the season. So, if you're not having that, again, you're going to have a more wide open offense. And again, that's where I look at this offense and think that it's more geared towards that. In Buffalo, Josh Allen didn't really have too many other weapons outside of Stefon Diggs. That was the biggest reason why they went after Diggs in the first place. And, they were looking for a secondary wide receiver option last year. They end up going with Dalton Kincaid in the draft as a second tight end instead, along with Dawson Knox. So, I think that for this offense in particular, I think that Amari Cooper is going to have a fantastic season for the Cleveland Browns this year. But I also think that there's a part of it where I think that there's more weapons here all around, and I think that's a more balanced offense overall, where you're not going to have Deshaun Watson having to do it all and having to air it out deep. So I don't necessarily think that Amari would be in that top 5 for me, just because of the other weapons that are there that will be, getting fed targets from Deshaun Watson. But I can understand his thinking. I just disagree with that there.
Okay, that's fair enough. All right, this point in time, we're a month away from training camp. Biggest concerns you have for the Browns, and what do you think the strengths of the roster are?
So I will say for the strength, I will go ahead and say the pass defense. Whether it be back in the secondary or the pass rush. I know we touched on it a little bit here. But I do think that the secondary almost gets slept on a little bit. I know that, MJ Emerson didn't end up making the Pro Bowl last year. You had Denzel Ward. Greg Newsome, I know he got targeted a little bit. But, again, that'll happen when you have 3 really good cornerback options out there as well. But also, too, one name that I think gets kind of I wouldn't say disrespected, maybe forgotten about a little bit, just how good he was, is Juan Thornhill. And Juan Thornhill is that deep center field type that really can go ahead and make plays on the ball. He can create those interceptions for you. Obviously dealt with injuries last season. I think that he can rebound as long as he stays healthy. And I think he'll be somebody that's a key factor for them this year. And on the defensive line, like I mentioned, Mike Hall Jr., I think he's going to be somebody that, I was very excited when the Browns selected him in the second round. I'm excited to see how they go ahead and handle and utilize him, as a rotational defensive tackle in his first year. I do think that he really can create a lot of plays and create a lot of quarterback pressures and help Myles Garrett out, help Zadarius Smith out, help Alex Wright out, and Obo Okoronkwo, who I haven't even mentioned yet at this point. So, I do think the pass defense is probably the biggest strength that I see. And when it comes to the biggest concern, I wouldn't necessarily qualify it as a concern. I would more so put the biggest question mark just that I'm looking out for is going to be this offensive line. Because again, you've had Bill Callahan here since 2020. You have a lot of guys that have been coming in. I understand you have, DeJuan Jones, we feel great about. Joel Bitonio, we feel great about, obviously. Same thing with Wyatt Teller, but I look at Jedrick Wills. Is he going to be focused going into this season? Is he going to be able to be utilized in the best way possible at left tackle? You still have the question marks surrounding Jack Conklin. And then on top of that, too, with Andy Dickerson coming in, I understand that, he's going to try to go ahead and just talk about the techniques more so than anything. But at the same time, everybody has their preferences when it comes to how they want to utilize the run game, how do they want to have their blocking schemes. And I think that when you have the different language and when you have the different philosophies coming in, I'm just intrigued to see how they utilize that has been a position of strength and how that maybe gets adjusted and tweaked going into this season.
Mac Robinson, appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much for hopping on with us. Thanks very much, Mac.
Yeah, of course. Always happy to hop on, Dave. Thanks for the time.
Mac Robinson, 92.3 The Fan, always insightful stuff with the Browns. We're going to step aside. We turn our attention to the Guardians, more specifically guys trying to get back to the Guardians from Columbus. We'll check in with Ryan Mitchell, voice of the Clippers, talking Gavin Williams, Joey Cantillo rehab. Sports for CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Moneymaker from the Ohio Lottery has no interest in beating around the bush. Money Maker. You play the game, you could win money. Up to $2 million. With more than $88 million in prizes from $50 to $500. Moneymaker cuts right to the cash. Unlike this guy.
We turn our attention to the Guardians here on Sports for CLE. More specifically, the Columbus Clippers. Guardians need some help starting pitching. They have a couple of guys rehabbing down at AAA Columbus. Let's welcome in Ryan Mitchell. He is the voice of the Columbus Clippers. Ryan, appreciate the time. We'll start with a guy that everybody knows that's followed the Guardians. Gavin Williams had a pretty good season a season ago, his first taste of the big leagues. Has not been able to pitch at the big league level, down there rehabbing. What have you seen from Gavin Williams in the rehab starts that you have seen him make?
Well, he's made 4 with us so far, and he hasn't gone farther than 3+ innings so far, but that's trying to build up a pitch count for a guy that missed almost the entirety of spring training and, a couple of months. And so he's trying to build up that pitch count. His first outing, he hit 97, 98 with the fastball. He hasn't really been back there much since, but the fastball looks good, and he's getting a lot of strikeouts. The number of strikeouts per inning, very good, but the ERA is not great right now. It's 7.88 because there have been a couple of home runs. There have been some runners on base via walk, and then a lot of times after he has left the game with runners on base, those have come in to score. So the ERA is a little bit deceptive. Obviously, what you want to see is the good fastball velocity and the movement on the secondary stuff. And we are seeing some of all of that. The secondary stuff at times has looked good. The fastball velocity has been at least mid-90s most of the time. And it seemed like with each start, they, as you do, trying to push them a little bit farther into the game. And toward the end, the fastball velocity started to dip. That's to be expected. So you're still trying to build this guy up. And when he is built up, obviously the Cleveland Guardians want him in the major leagues. But a matter of consideration, something that's been going on really all year long, and particularly in very recent history for the Guardians, you don't want somebody to come up to the bigs who's only going to give you 3 or 4 innings out of a start. That bullpen has really been outstanding, but it's also been heavily used. And so when Williams is ready, I would think that the Guardians want him to be able to come up and give at least what you would consider a full start. 5 innings, maybe get into the 6th inning. The word is he's going to pitch for Akron this week. The Clippers are on the road in Worcester, Massachusetts, so he's going to stay a little bit closer to home and continue to try and build up, and hopefully he will.
So basically you're seeing some of the things that you want to see relative to the fastball speed. What's the command? Has the command been there? Is that starting to come? You mentioned he's coming from ground zero, basically.
Right. So it's gotten better with each start. He's still trying to refine that and get it where it needs to be. But, that's often one of the final things that's going to come. You talk about a developing pitcher in the first place. Command is the last thing, really, that guys figure out, and some do it at the major league level. So it's not a surprise that he's still trying to hone in on commanding all of his pitches, and that's a process. But yeah, the shape of the pitches is good. The velocity on the fastball is good. It's just a matter of getting everything right because, again, like you said, starting from ground zero, it's not an easy task.
Another guy that has not been up to the big leagues yet, that has been on the radar of the Guardians, is rehabbing there as well. Joey Cantillo, take us through the type of pitcher that you've seen him and what we're seeing from Cantillo.
So Joey's not really on a rehab. He's on the Clippers roster. He did start the season injured. I was down there in spring training in Arizona just before the start of the season and did an interview with Joey, and not long after that he had that hamstring injury, and it was a significant one. It had him on the shelf for almost 2 months, and he's back in the rotation now for the Clippers, and he's looked pretty good. 2.16 ERA. He's only made a couple of starts, 8 1/3 innings, but he has struck out 11. Like you were talking about, the command is still kind of being refined. The walks are higher than he is used to having, but the fastball velocity is good. He has a Bugs Bunny changeup. It is an outstanding changeup, a great curveball to go with it as well. Throws a slider. This is a guy that really has the tools, and kind of like Gavin Williams. If you told a scout to draw up a prototypical pitcher, well, he'd be the one from the left side. Big, tall, strong young man that has a 4-pitch mix and pretty good pitches, really, that can get outs, I'm sure, when it happens at the major league level. But again, starting basically from scratch, trying to build himself up. So he's not going deep into games yet either. He's not on the 40-man roster, but he's a guy certainly that is in the future plans for the Cleveland Guardians. And you just hope that he continues to build up, continues to have that success, and build his confidence. I think if he believes in himself and believes that his stuff is as good as it is, he has a really high ceiling.
Yeah, you mentioned the changeup, and that's the thing that I have seen. That's like a plus changeup. It's elite among elite. So where is he at relative to how far he's getting into games, and what does his velocity look like as well?
He's a guy that last year when he first came up to AAA, we would see touch 97, 98, but typically would sit 94 to 95 with the fastball, and he would be able to maintain that deep into his outings as well. He's been 95 at the beginning of his outings this year, and that has tailed off as, again, just like Gavin Williams, he is trying to stretch himself out and build that endurance to keep that velocity up through his outings. And the outings have not been full starters innings yet, and that's to be expected. After getting himself healthy, he made one rehab start out in Arizona and then joined the Clippers. And so he's been on the mound a couple of times now, still trying to build himself up. He hasn't gone deep enough yet to qualify for a win, but hopefully that's coming very soon.
And again, a guy that is certainly going to be on the Guardians' radar once he gets to that full pitch limit, because right now they're not getting 5 innings, 6 innings from many of their starters as well.
Yeah, and obviously that's a problem. Stephen Vogt wants to get starters to go 6 innings, maybe even go into the 7th inning. He has a real luxury and has all season long in that almost everybody in the bullpen is clicking on all cylinders, and they have really leaned on that group. I've said several times on our broadcast that I'm not sure if there's a better unit in the major leagues when you talk about position players, infielders, outfielders, catchers, starting pitchers, and relief pitchers. I don't think there's a better unit in the majors than the Cleveland Guardians bullpen staff. They have all been outstanding, yesterday's game notwithstanding, but you can only lean on that for so long, and you're going to wind up wearing those arms out. They're not meant to go that often for a full season. Everybody has a lull where the starters don't go deep, but for the Cleveland Guardians, it has, we're in the middle of June now, and they have only had really 1 or 2 runs where the starting staff has been able to go deep into the ball game. Now, they've had some off days recently. That has helped, but that's really not the case for the next 3 or 4 weeks. I think they only have 1, maybe 2 off days. So those starters are going to have to go deeper into games because until Williams is ready, Cantillo is ready, you do have Xavier Curry down here, and he's stretched out, and Curry's last 2 starts have been very, very encouraging, even last 3 starts. Earlier in the season, his numbers were not good at the AAA level, but he seems to have turned a corner. And so Xavier Curry obviously is a guy that the Cleveland Guardians know. They had him in their bullpen all year last year, and he's made some starts for them this year. And if it comes down to it, whether or not you are comfortable with your options, sometimes you have to just go grab a guy. And for the Cleveland Guardians, you have to figure out who that is if that need arises.
All right, another guy that kind of starting to grab some attention is Jean-Kenzie Noel, 23 years, turns 23 in July, hitting
Yes.
.295, 13 doubles, and he's got some power. What have you noticed with him?
Well, I think some power is underselling it. That right there that you're seeing is an opposite field shot here at Polar Park. It was his second home run of the night. And actually, that was his first home run of the night. The second was a pull job. It was an absolute blast, and the crowd here in Worcester really showed their appreciation for it. There it is right there. I think they called it 470 feet. He's got 17 home runs now. He is among the league leaders in home runs and runs batted in. And going back to the middle of May, you could say he's the best hitter in the International League. He's got the best batting average. He's top 3 in slugging. His on-base percentage is right up there. And he just mashes. And he has had a growth since April of not swinging at those sliders well off the outside part of the plate. He is forcing pitchers to come into the zone, and that's where he can do an awful lot of damage. He's a huge guy. He's got legs like tree trunks. He had a 3-homer game earlier this year, and he's got the hardest hit ball in the minor leagues all season long at 118.4 miles per hour off the bat. And it was a double because it had a launch angle of about 8 degrees and still traveled 215 feet because he hit it so doggone hard. He plays first base. He plays it well. He plays the corner outfield spots. He's got a big arm. He played third base last year and showed that you can put him at that position if you need him there, and he can get the job done. It's just a matter of developing everything fully to get to the major league level where everybody's got good breaking stuff, and they're not going to throw it in the zone until you prove that you can lay off. He's starting to do that here at AAA, and now hitting near 300. He is a danger to International League pitchers.
Yeah, to your point, 56 strikeouts in 261 plate appearances. So you're seeing more plate discipline. I'm guessing that's kind of, hey, you need to get in the zone, and then you're going to get your shot up here.
Yeah, certainly. And the walks are starting to mount. He's never been a guy who walks a lot, but I think he's up to 18 walks on the year so far. So when guys are not throwing him strikes, he's laying off a little bit. He's taking a walk if they're going to give it to him and letting the guys behind him do some work as well. So he doesn't feel like he has to do the job himself. This Clippers team right now offensively is clicking on all cylinders. Another huge night last night. And we went to Indianapolis a couple of weeks ago and scored 62 runs over the 6-game series, including a 12-run ninth inning. So up and down the batting order, this Clippers team really seems to be firing on all cylinders. And if the pitching kind of comes together here, the Clippers are in for a really big second half, I think.
Ryan Mitchell, voice of the Columbus Clippers, as always. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Ryan.
Of course, anytime. Glad to be with you.
All right, Ryan Mitchell, we always appreciate his insights on the guys that are getting it done at AAA. Before we go, some news from around Major League Baseball. Yan Gomes, a former Indians catcher, now with the Cubs, DFA'd. And so they're going with a young guy, Amaya, at catcher being the Cubs. Gomes, good track record, positive reputation, and a lot of teams need catching. That tweet from John Heyman. So that's somebody to listen out for the Guardians, as well as Bo Naylor and Austin Hedges struggling offensively. So Yan Gomes, DFA'd. He will be available at some point in time. So it'll be interesting to see if the Guardians bring him back to Cleveland. It's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We'll see you back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow at 4 on Sports for CLE.